I'm Pastor Jeremy Combs, and thank you for joining us for our weekly Bible study as we're meeting the Majesty in Matthew. Well, we're starting a chapter today. We start into chapter 12, and it's amazing with just 15 minutes a week. And of course, we've been doing this thing since August, but hey, 15 minutes a day, we've made it through. This would be about almost a third of the book, a little over a third of the book. And so here we go. A lot of what we're going to talk about today and maybe into next week, we'll see, is about the Sabbath day. And we talk about Jesus, and we talk about how that Jesus was confronted. Jesus was opposed. And it's amazing as you read through the Gospels, this would be Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, that much of his opposition didn't come from the derelicts and the drunks and the drug addicts and the prostitutes and the greedy money collectors. In fact, Jesus was chided because they were friends of his. Most of his direct opposition came from, we would say, within. This would be from the religious institution. But in many ways, I almost hate to say within because they were within, but were without. They were about as close as you could come to Jesus, but as far away as you could come. And this would be the religious crowd, the crowd that was saying, you've got to do this. And Jesus came in and said, I didn't come to destroy the law. I came to fulfill it. The way to fulfill it is you got to be. And if you will be, then you will do, not the other way around. Do. Don't worry about being. Okay. And the fear of Christianity today is that we can be all about doing. Well, I'm in church. Well, I read my Bible. I pray every day. I try to do. And again, it comes down to do. And I'm not saying we don't need to be doing things, but I'm saying first things first, work from the inside out, not the, hey, if I do these things, it's going to help me to be a better person. No, that's not how it works, okay? In some ways, it makes you more of in a lot of ways, devilish of a person because you can put on a front and can put on a great vein or guise of pride by thinking that the outside can make the inside better. But if you start from the inside and you start to change from the inside, then the outside will naturally just follow in that progression. And so I hope that's not too confusing for you. What I'm saying today is let's do what we do because of who we are and what we are in Jesus Christ, not just for a facade or to measure up to some standard. It'll all be explained as we look at this controversial subject in Jesus' day called the Sabbath. Verse number 1, at that time Jesus went on the Sabbath day through the corn, and his disciples were hungered. And he began to pluck the ears of corn and to eat. Okay, couple of thoughts here. Of course, we're talking about Jesus. Sabbath day. What day would the Sabbath day be? Well, of course, that wouldn't be our Sunday. That's the Lord's day. Sabbath would be on Saturday. And this was established right from the get-go. God created the world in 6 days. And on the seventh day, this would be Saturday, he rested. Thus, we really believe establishing a Sabbath principle as we would say time itself really began. And then in Exodus, when they received the 10 Commandments, it is then put into, we would say, into stone, no pun intended there. And one of the 10 Commandments is to remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. And that is you work 6 days, and then on the last day you rest. Now, I hate to tell you this, but work is a godly thing. If you don't work, you shouldn't eat. Okay, what were they doing before the fall of man in the Garden of Eden when it was beautiful and perfect? They were working. Adam was put to work. What are we going to do one day when we die and Lord willing you make it to heaven? You're going to work. So songs sometimes may give us a wrong impression. Like I think about that old hymn, we'll work till Jesus comes, we'll work till break of sun. And it's reminding us to be busy, and I don't have any problem with that. But it's not the idea of as soon as I close my eyes in death, that I wake up and I'm in this paradise where we're just all lounging around on the clouds, plucking our harps. No, what are we going to do? We're going to work. You say, that doesn't really sound like heaven. I don't know if I really want to be a part of that. Well, what you're doing is you are looking at work through a skewed perspective, and that skewed perspective is skewed terribly by sin. You go to work and you're tired because your body didn't get the rest that it needed. And then you go to work and you're bound to time looking at it. And then you've got an obnoxious coworker or maybe a rude or wrong coworker. And then your back is aching and it's hot in the summer or it's cold in the winter. Think about perfect conditions, perfect environment. Your body is in perfect condition. And then there is that satisfaction of work. I could go and work outside for someone else or something else. And boy, it's hard and it's work. And then, but then I go and I do this very same thing at my house and I'm bettering my house. And I'm going to know that I'm going to reap the benefits and enjoy this. And my wife's going to be pleased with it. And I tell you what, I get done at the same day, still tired, still sore, but boy, there's that, wow, this feels really good to see this done. That's going to be the idea of heaven. And so we're going to work in heaven. So we ought to work here on earth. But the tendency for man is to want to work all the way through, become workaholics, and never take any time off. And I think we're seeing today much of the illnesses and problems that we live in life is because of people just are never turning things off. I think that the Sabbath, some would argue and say, okay, well, Pastor, Sabbath is not reiterated in the New Testament like all the other commands. Okay, I understand that, but that doesn't wipe away or say we don't have the principle there. David himself said, "Be still and know that I am God." There's times we've got to pull ourselves apart, and I think a one day out of a week, in many ways, would be a tithe of your time to God. Is a wonderful thing. You say, well, what should I do on that Sabbath day? What am I allowed to do? What am I not allowed to do? Wrong perspective there. The idea is, what is the purpose of the Sabbath? The purpose of the Sabbath is for the Lord, and it's for us to be rejuvenated, both physically, mentally, and especially spiritually. So you look at your Sabbath day, rest. Don't cut your yard. Don't run to the mall if you can avoid that. Do things that can help you to rest. Church starts normally around 10. For most people, you can probably sleep in an extra hour, maybe two, depending on the day, or sleep in a little bit and get up and have breakfast with the family. And then you come to church and you do the church thing. And then our family, we like to go home and usually we have a meal. And usually it's on Sunday that, like, my mom will come over. And as a family, we just eat and talk and fellowship together. It's not as fast as through the week would be. And then typically, now I can't always do this, but a little nap for me or a lengthier nap for the kids and my wife. And then they'll get up and they'll kind of spend some time together and read or do what they want to do as a family. And then we go back to church. We do at usually 5, and we're not done till about 7:30, but we're again in the Word of God. And then a lot of times we'll come home that night and we'll put on some pizzas or some sandwiches or whatever, and we'll watch an old movie, or we might watch a ball game, or spend time together again. And it's just like one day where it's a rejuvenation physically. I'm not out doing what I'm doing every week, and physically, and then mentally, it's a change of pace. And then, of course, spiritually, there's just that extra time that I need for the Lord. And so the Sabbath is important. Now, what's happening here is they had such strict rules and guidelines. There were things you could or could not do to where the Sabbath had become oh so oppressive. And as they were walking through the fields, it says he plucked off the ears of corn. Now, I don't think this is talking about the corn like we have here in Indiana. I think the idea is it's like a wheat or a grain. And as you would grab a handful, you would just winnow it in your hands, and then the chaff would be gone, and you would take the grains and you would eat them. I don't know that it'd be a fabulous meal, but it'd be better than nothing. You say, were they stealing? No, farmers were instructed along the trails. They were to leave some there for those who didn't have a meal, of course, for the poor as well. And so what they were doing was fine. And what they were doing was they were out walking, probably between synagogues and places where they could serve God, and didn't have time really that day to sit down and eat. And so they're just grabbing a quick snack and going on their way. Verse 2, when the Pharisees saw it, they said unto him, Behold, thy disciples do that which is not lawful to do upon the Sabbath day. But he said unto them, so Jesus is always going to compare Scripture with Scripture. So they're going to take one verse and they're going to say, oh, and so Jesus says, in golf, let the Bible be the context of itself. He says, have you not read what David did? So this would be in the Old Testament, right up their alley. This would be David, greatly revered in Israel. What did he do? When he was hungered, and they that were with him, how he entered into the house of God. And he did eat the showbread, which was not lawful for him to eat, neither for them which were with him, but only for the priests. So what happens in this David affair? We find that you go back into the book of 1 Samuel. Saul has been throwing javelins at David, is wanting to kill him. David has to flee town so quickly he doesn't take any weapons and he doesn't take any food. And so when he gets to where the high priests are, he asks if they have anything to eat. And apparently times were rough. They didn't have anything to eat, but they had just replaced the show bread. So they'd put out the holy bread in the morning, and the old they would take, and that would be something, some of the provisions. And it was supposed to be for the priests. Now, obviously, the priests could then use this at their discretion if they wanted to help those that were in need. And apparently, as they saw David and they saw his need and he was on service for the Lord, they said, well, we've got the showbread here. And they said, if you have been pure, you haven't defiled yourself, we would be glad to share that with you. And so they gave the showbread to David. And what Jesus here is pointing out is that wasn't wrong for David. Even the priests themselves gave to David this king. Then he goes a step further and he says, or have you not read in the law how that on the Sabbath day the priests in the temple profane the Sabbath and are blameless? So who's one of the busiest working individuals in the nation of Israel during the Sabbath? Of course, it'd be the priests. They've got to come in and they've got to get the fire started and the candles lit, and they have to bring the animals in, and they have to slay the animal and dispose of what needs disposed of, and take the meat and offer it as a sacrifice and sprinkle the blood. And they probably on that days where they were sacrificing to God, especially on Sabbath, would be one of their busiest days. Are they going to say that this is that they are sinful? Well, no. People would say, well, no, they're doing the work of God. This is exactly what Jesus is doing. But I say unto you that in this place is one greater than the temple. Well, nowhere in the Bible does it ever say that Jesus isn't God. Ding, 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 right here. Verse number 6, it does. He says very clearly, in this place is a person greater than the temple. In other words, they're ministering to me and for me. And so if the priests are allowed to do this in the temple, if David was allowed to take bread that had been at the temple and now was part of the priests, why can't these, my disciples that are following me and ministering to and for me, what is the crime of them taking a little bit of grain, rubbing it in their hands, and then nourishing themselves? But if ye had known what this meaneth, I will have mercy and not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the guiltless. For the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath day. So the idea here is you show mercy and not sacrifice to those who are deserving of mercy. And this is the idea of, normally if somebody was out hoeing and working in their fields, yeah, they would be guilty and they could be punished. But here is somebody that is obliged or is obligated to do the work of God. Rather than condemning these people, have mercy on them and say, they're working hard when we don't have to. And if they want to take a little grain, winnow it in their hand and eat it, then that's okay. They are blameless in this matter. Why? For the Son of Man, again, that's one of Jesus' favorite titles for himself, is Lord even of the Sabbath day. In other words, he's Lord of Sunday, he's Lord of Monday, he's Lord of Tuesday, he's Lord of Wednesday, he's Lord of Thursday, he's Lord of Friday, he's even Lord of Saturday. So God, let's put it in our perspective today as we wrap it up, is Lord of Sunday. And so let us do Sunday what we would for the Lord. Maybe you're going home from church. Would you normally change your tires and put new ones on? Well, I think that's something you shouldn't, you could put off to another day so that your body can rest, so that you'd have time to be in church, so that you'd have no excuse. But supposing you pass an elderly couple and there they have a flat tire, are you breaking the Lord's day to pull over and roll up your sleeves and say, hey, let me help you so you can get on your way and change that person's tire out? I don't think so. I think I think sometimes here at church, my busiest day is Sunday, and I often don't get much rest on Sunday, and that's where maybe the next day, Monday, I find time to rejuvenate my body. I try to find time to spend more time with God, and so really the emphasis isn't especially on the day as much as it is upon what you're doing. Now, I will say this, and then we'll be done. Sunday, I think you need to be I think that ought to be your Lord's Day. I think that needs to be your quote unquote Sabbath day. It's just a practical way of I'm in church on Sunday morning. I'm in church on Sunday afternoon. Most people are off work. Now, not everybody. I get that, but it's a practical day. So don't use it as an advantage to say, well, I don't want to go to church because I just want to rest. No, there's something about rest that you could sleep in a little bit. You can get up. You can get to church. Find rest in Jesus Christ spiritually that will then help you to maybe go home and lay across the bed and get a nap in the afternoon or get to bed a little bit earlier on Sunday evening. And so don't let rest be a crutch, but recognize what you're trying to do is rest physically, rest mentally, and then, of course, rest spiritually by looking to the Lord more. Hey, thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.